We come to the closing scene of 2 Samuel 19 today, and we'll actually continue into the first couple of verses of chapter 20, recognizing the chapter markers were made at least a millennium after the text was written, if not 2 millennia, and so our scene continues into at least the first couple of verses of chapter 20 as we see. And as you look on the left side of the screen, those 3 verses we're going to look at, 41 to 43, we see it as the people of Israel against the people of Judah in the face of the king, but speaking to each other. And there are a number of translation issues that we'll need to look at to understand that scene. But one of the things I was noting last time to draw to our attention is that contrary to what we see here, and we'll look at the more accurate translation in a moment, it's almost all in the first person singular. The people of Judah talking about I and me, and the people of Israel the same way. So it's a curiously stylized situation that in a world that doesn't have social media or national television is giving us a sense of the state of the relationship between these 2 different peoples, Israel and Judah. And one of the questions that scholars grapple with is, did David bring them apart? Were they one people and David has torn them apart because of his position? Or were they never one people? Is David trying to put together something that never was wanting to be together, and the Israelites perhaps never wanted to be under David as king? So to understand the situation of our immediate passage, let's go back and look at the narrative context of where we've been in this chapter. Because the previous chapter ended with the death of Absalom, and this begins with David lamenting the death of Absalom, as you can see there in the bold, "Oh, my son Absalom." So just going briefly over it so we can see where Israel and Judah have been in the question of returning the king, which is to say returning themselves to allegiance to David as king. So, as we recall here in this first central paragraph of the story, Joab convinces David that he'd better get off his butt and get going, or all the people who've risked their lives for him to kill Absalom will feel like they've wasted their time. And so he does get up, and then we hear about that Israel fled. The moment that David is in the gate and people hear it, Israel fled, man 2 tents, as we hear, which will echo in the beginning of chapter 20, as we'll see. And then they go around seeking justice around all the tribes of Israel, trying to figure out what to do. The king delivered us from the hand of our enemies and saved us from the Philistines, but now he's fled. But Absalom, who he anointed over us, is now dead. So what should we do? And their question is, why do you say nothing about returning the king? That's the people of Israel talking amongst themselves around the tribes of Israel, seeking justice. And then we see David responds by sending the message via the priests Zadok and Abiathar to the elders of Israel to encourage them in the language of the monarchy, or indirectly saying, will you be the last to return, which is really saying, will you be the first to return? The talk of all Israel has come to the king. So he tries to encourage Judah to come, and Amasa sways their hearts, and all the people of Judah as one said to the king, and they say they're on his side. And so they begin. Then we have these 3 scenes that we've been looking at, where David first takes care of the Shimei and the Mephibosheth, remnants of the house of Saul, promising not to kill Shimei now, but he will later on his deathbed order Solomon to do it. And Mephibosheth continues to be at the king's table. So David seems to have the Saulites taken under control, and then Barzillai, his friend representing the Transjordan people like the Gileadites, as he's named here many times, seems to have a treaty that David, when he gets back to Jerusalem, will continue to protect them. So with all that established, David is now on his way back to Jerusalem, and that's where we have this scene here. And note how it takes place. We don't know exactly where this is. We know they've passed over to Gilgal and they're on their way. If we look at the map here, they've gone from the Jordan here across the Jordan to Gilgal, and they're on their way back to Jerusalem. But as we'll see in a few verses, not in this video, but in the next one, the word will come to Joab about the rebellion of Sheba in Jerusalem. So how that word's coming indicates that perhaps David is farther back on this journey, farther home to Jerusalem than the text is explicitly indicating. So let's go back and look at our passage, and we'll read it from the right side here, and I'll make notes, reference to the notes back, because so much on the left side is confusing given what the Hebrew actually says. So, starting right here, and behold, always left out by the NORSV, all the people of Israel came to the king. Notice, they came to the king and said to him. So this is directed of all the people of Israel. Notice that this is after we were told in the previous scene that half the people of Israel brought the king on his way. So we ended that with half the people coming, and we don't know about the other half. Presumably, they're still in their tents or still resisting David returning to Jerusalem to be their king. But we don't hear it's only half now. We hear as if it's all the people of Israel. And notice how I've highlighted this. People is a key word throughout, but I've highlighted Israel and Judah just in this passage. So that's why they're in bold instead of in the same color as the word people here. So the people of Israel came to the king and said to him, "Why have our kindred, the people of Judah, stolen you away?" And notice how they're presenting it. They're making it sound like they had David first. But as we know back from 2 Samuel 5, he was king over Judah first, and it's only after Abner is dead that the people of Israel say, "We're your bone and flesh, and why don't you reign over us?" So it certainly seemed like the people of Israel were reluctant at first to have David reign over them. And as I was just noting, when they found out earlier in this chapter that he was back at the gate of Mahanaim, not the gate of Jerusalem, they all fled to their tents. So now it's not clear what the intention is or who exactly is speaking to suggest that they are claiming the first right in the king, not that they came along later. But the king doesn't respond. Notice they're addressing this to the king, that he will address the question of why have the people of Judah stolen you away and passed the king and his household over the Jordan with all David's men with him. And notice what that's saying about David's men, that David's men are somehow different than the people of Judah and the people of Israel. And that's a little hint that the text gives us throughout the story, that David is relying on his personal bodyguards and his personal people. And we'll see how Joab relies on them in the beginning of the next chapter as he goes after Sheba. So then the people of Judah answer the people of Israel. David just sits there silently as if he's the referee of this, but he's not. They were addressing him directly. And all the people of Judah answer, note as if the people of Israel didn't know they were there. And plainly, this is stylized at an extreme level. Obviously, the land of Israel and the land of Judah is not emptied out to have all the people here. This is expressing something of popular opinion being reduced down to the stylized scene here. So the people of Judah answered the people of Israel, because the king is near to me, near to me. Notice on the left side it has is near of kin to us, and yet that's not what it says. It doesn't say near of kin. It's simply near. But to me, singular, the king is near to me. Do they mean that physically? Do they mean that emotionally? It's not specified. Why then are you angry over this word? Have I eaten from the king? Notice the singular again. Eaten from the king, suggesting, have I used the king's resources? Have I, in the sense of people of Judah, been reliant on the king for food? In other words, has he favored us? We don't know if that's true or not. They're asking it rhetorically, and there's no answer. And they add also, or has he lifted, yes, lifted me, the more literal translation of what we see on the left side, or has he given us any gift? But really lifted, which is say raised them up, made them seem important. In other words, have they taken anything from the king, or has he given them any favor? And in the rhetorical answer would seem to be no, but hasn't he? He's put his palace in Judah, in Jerusalem, and he certainly seems to be highlighting his presence in Jerusalem and Judah, but none of the rhetorical questions, or if they're real questions, are being answered here. The people of Israel answered the people of Judah. Notice David is still silent amidst this. I have 10 hands in the king. The New RSV on the left side has we have 10 shares. And it could have seemed share, and share will be what we'll hear in the echo. And as you can see below in verse 20, the word portion here is much like share. But the word here is not share, it's literally hands. S3E212, 10 hands, representing the 10 tribes. And we'll see how in the next scene, David confines the 10 concubines in a guardhouse, seemingly punishing them for Israel not being with him, even though at the time they say they have 10 hands, which say 10 tribes in the king, and in David also. Notice they're making a distinction here, and most scholars would take it as I do, that 10 hands in the king is to say 10 hands in the monarchy, so 10 tribes committed to the monarchy, and in David in particular, more than you. But why would Israel be able to claim that they have more hands, if you will, or more skin in the game, as we might say, in David than Judah, given again that Judah was where David first reigned from? Then they continue, why then have I become small to you? The New RSV has despise, and it's the same word as Sarah's perception of Hagar back in Genesis 16 that the New RSV translates the same way as despise, as opposed to being small in your eyes. So notice the contrast here between we have not been lifted up. The people of Israel say that we have become small to you. So what the Judahites were saying is in relation to the king has not lifted us up, but Israel is saying that Israel has become small to Judah. And there's irony there because the land of Israel, as you can even see from this map that doesn't have the tribal designations, is all this area up here, as you can see Israel up here, and Judah is simply the smaller part down there. And they continue, was not I, in the singular, the first to speak of returning the king? Well, not that we saw. In fact, they weren't coming. They weren't sure. And that's why David sent the message of the priests Zadok and Abiathar to try to rally Judah to come. So the questions they're asking, which neither of them answer, seems to be not accurate to the story we've seen. But they're each trying to make the case that they're more loyal to the king than anybody else, which is very strange given that Israel was just running to their tents and that Sheba in the very next verse will call them back to their tents again. So the narrator concludes the words of the people of Judah were fiercer than the words of the people of Israel. And again, we hear nothing from the king. So how is this left? It's left that there's this division here. Let's look back at a couple of my notes. We hear a couple of things that scholars might have to say about this. So back at verse 42, Joel Baden notes, this episode is faintly ridiculous. It serves rather to suggest that Israel and Judah were each desperate to bring David back, a notion at odds with the reality, that Israel had no other options and that Judah was once again coerced into accepting David as king. So we could read that either way. And we'll switch right in the midst of this with that all hanging there to the beginning of chapter 20. And we'll go over chapter 20 next time, although I'll note now that there's a wide chiasm that you can see here if I zoom back out. So you can see framed around the blowing of the trumpet at the beginning, the death of Amasa in the first part, the death of Sheba in the second part, and then Joab taking control again in the center. And even though we're continuing another chapter, and it's not about Joab immediately, I'll go down a couple verses so we can see where we're going to go, just to these two verses. We might describe chapter 20 after this initial scene as the restoration of Joab, having been replaced by Amasa. As you can see here, Amasa will be dead, and at the end, Joab will be toward all the army of Israel again. So we can see that in many ways, chapter 19 was about the restoration of David, and chapter 20 is about the restoration of Joab. So let's just look at our immediate verses here, and there's the chiasm I was just noting. So the NRSV has now a scoundrel named Sheba, usually translating the more literal Belial here, like the scoundrel, the son of Belial, as I put it here. And there's the syntax is a little confused, so you see in the NRSV, now a scoundrel named Sheba, son of Bichri, a Benjaminite, happened to be there. I tried another way, and there, a so-called son of Belial named Sheba, son of Bichri. The word for there, Shem, and the word for name, Sham, are basically the same visible word. But either way, it's highlighting that he's there in the midst of the scene. So with the people of Israel and the people of Judah, the first person singular having this conversation, now somebody is singled out. But he's not described as an Israelite or a Judahite, but as a Benjaminite. I was noting when we saw the Benjaminites in the last scenes in chapter 19 that the Benjaminites are certainly understood as part of Israel in this sense. But they're a part of Israel that was loyal to Saul the Benjaminite. So he sounds the trumpet here, and that'll be echoed at the end when Joab sounds the trumpet to end it, and saying, we have no portion, or no share perhaps in David, but it's portion there, and no share here, Nahala. And that's the word that is really as share, that isn't here as hands. In the son of Jesse. And notice how closely this corresponds to 1 Kings 12:16, when the actual rebellion against Solomon said Rehoboam takes place. When all Israel saw that the king would not listen to them, the people answered the king, what share do we have in David? We have no inheritance of the son of Jesse. To your tents, O Israel. Look now to your own house, O David. Notice not, O Judah, but O David. So Israel went away to their tents. So that will happen in one generation later after Solomon reigns and is dead. But notice how this cry is echoing across the generation. We Israelites, although he's speaking as a Benjaminite, but certainly it seems to be as the Israelites, he calls Israel, have no share in the son of Jesse. How different that is from the argument they were just made that we have 10 shares in the king and in David. But will Sheba be heard? Yes, he will. Everyone to their tents, O Israel. So all the people of Israel withdrew from David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri. What is that telling us? Is it telling us that the argument that they just made here in the previous verses, that they have 10 shares in the king and that they're have priority is a lie, or they've changed their mind. It's not clear. It's the kind of thing that leads scholars to see multiple sources, and one can see it that way. But one can also read it as a consistent story that in the chaos of events with Absalom dead and David coming from the Jordan and not clear who's on whose side, that there's chaos. People aren't sure what their future is and aren't sure what the right thing to do is, and they don't seem to have much time to reflect on it. There's no campaign season here to give people a chance to sort through the positions of David and who else. No one else is evident. So all the people of Israel withdraw or went up from David and followed Sheba, son of Bichri. Notice what a key word that is of Sheba, son of Bichri throughout, that he's named that throughout. But the people of Judah followed their king, nor says steadfastly. But the word here, hard to pronounce without vowels, here with the vowels you can pronounce it a deveku, literally means to cling. It's used in Genesis 2:24 for what the man and the woman do once they discover each other. So that's why I've translated over here that they clung to their king from the Jordan to Jerusalem. And so David will come to his house in Jerusalem and have to deal with what is he going to do about this divided monarchy. And we'll see how Joab inserts himself in the scene, starting with what we see next time. See you then. Bye-bye.